So I'm looking at the inside of the primary on the bike that we're building from the frame up. And, you know, just a couple of minutes ago, we were looking at the primary that's installed in the red Springfield. So I thought I'd come over here and show you guys the empty inner primary, so you'd have a reference to the parts we looked at a few minutes ago, and then the inner primary that I finished, putting all the components back in on the red Springfield. So as you can see, this is, you know, it's just in its raw state. The rotor is here. The stator is beneath that, you know, inside this hole here. I can see the copper windings of the stator, where AC voltage is produced in the mechanical movement of these magnets, which revolve around the fields, if you will, the coils that are part of the stator. And out of this plug here comes sort of a rough or a crude AC voltage. I don't have the wires here so you can't see it, but then the power rectifier, you know, there'll be a brand new power rectifier that goes, you know, mounts to the lower part of the frame here. And that power rectifier will take this rough or crude AC voltage that comes out of here, which is produced by the rotor and the stator, which are in the primary, and it purifies it to a very usable, clean, noise-free 12 volts DC. So it's a pretty cool thing how the motorcycles are their own electrical power plant, and how, you know, gasoline is the fuel that starts it all from a spark from the ignition, and all by, you know, the starter jack shaft being fired out to that gear, as we saw in the completed inner primary. So still have the kickstand to mount here. This is the transmission shaft. So the other end of this goes directly into the transmission. You can see the hardware that holds the inner primary in. There's locking washers on either side of where my finger was, and those tabs get bent over so that it can't loosen up. The starter jack shaft goes to the starter, which is not yet installed. So I wanted to give you guys a look at a finished inner primary on the red Springfield, and the empty inner primary that I'll, you know, begin to put the components on right away. So there's not a ton of, you know, I don't want to underestimate what's left in this, because there is a lot of work left. But having the engine installed, I did put the clutch basket and the clutch hub on the other day, and that gave me the opportunity to adjust the clutch cable as it comes up to the clutch handle up here, the clutch lever, excuse me. And so I actually have that all adjusted by the fact that I put the clutch hub and the clutch basket in. I was able to adjust the actuator, which goes directly into the transmission here. So that's already all adjusted. I have wiring left. I have to get the wiring harnesses hooked up. The modular control unit, the ECM right here, I have to finish that. I have to get the sheet metal on, but we've made some good technical progress. And this inner primary will take me a half a day to get it put back together, going slow and making sure I do things correctly. So I'm going to swing around the other side of this Chief that we're building, and I'm going to go back to talking about the oil pump and the oil lines. So I wanted to give you guys a view, which I'm not sure quite how you can see in there, but here's one of the oil lines here. So the oil lines are looked at the closest to what would be where I'm standing now, or closest to the outside of the bike. They're considered oil line number 1. And the second one in, oil line 2. Next one, oil line 3. Next one, oil line 4. So this one that we can see so well here is oil line 4. So with the upgraded oil pump, which this rebuilt brand new engine has, what you do is you eliminate oil line 3, which is I'm putting my finger in there on the cap that I put on it. So you actually reduce one of the oil lines with the upgraded oil pump. That's one of the corrections. And one of the things you guys can look at if you're looking at purchasing a Power Plus bike, you'll know that it's been upgraded, that the oil pump has been upgraded to the one that has had the internal corrections made, if in fact there are 3 oil lines and not 4. And that's evidenced by the fact that oil line number 3, down here where my finger is permanently capped off. So that's just a little bit of information about the oil lines, you guys. I'm going to go back over, try and go slowly around here, back over to the Springfield. Another neat little tool I was going to show off is this, what looks like a small set of stairs. It's actually a phenolic tool that when you are loosening and tightening your primary components, this is used to go up under the primary chain and back against the sprocket like I'm sliding it in to give you the idea. There you go. It's staying there on its own. That way, when you loosen this compensating nut here, or the clutch hub nut, which is internal to here, it's underneath this whole assembly, that little phenolic device wedges itself. So as you're unloosening these 2 large nuts, which have quite a bit of torque on them, again, you know, this one is around 200 foot-pounds, 200 to 225, something like that. That's what Joe recommended. I may have said 250 in error when I was showing off the components before. So I usually tighten that up to about 215. That's where I go. I go between that 200 and 225. But I did want to show off this little phenolic tool to you guys, which is very useful if you're going to be doing primary work on your Chiefs. Hey, I guess that's it for today, you guys. I wanted to give you guys a quick update as to where I am on this before I sign off. Let's come back around to this side of the red Springfield. And again, it has the upgraded oil pump, and it has 3 oil lines. Again, this one here being the 4th oil line, or the farthest away. And if you guys have any problems with that and you'd like to know where the oil lines go, you know, I have a sketch that I made, so I can always rely on that and get back to basics. I try and take good notes for myself. So I'm just showing off one of the spotlights here that I had powder coated and had you know, Chief put on it, gold airbrushed with a couple of these really cool Indian feathers just draped down on the front of it. I've done that to all my Chiefs, along with the dual exhaust. I've done these dual powder coated spotlights that are airbrushed with in gold with Chief, and have a double set of feathers that are draped down around the back. Up around the front of the dash, I've had it also airbrushed to where it says Chief also. So it's a continuation of the 2003 Indian Chief that we're building. That front fender is just sitting there. I was just trying to get it off the floor. That's actually one of my unused fenders that I use for mock-ups. So I'll practice with that older fender that doesn't have the permanent paint on it. You know, I practice with that, installing that, so when you actually put the one on you just had freshly painted, you don't mark it up. Use some masking tape and possibly a little wax paper to keep the frame from rubbing against what the new fender that you've just put on. Here's a primary cover that's going to go on this bike that I'm building. Anyway, you guys, I'm going to call it a day. And thanks for tuning in. And hey, we'll see you around on YouTube on the next episode. Take care.